You are listening to Level Up Your Gaming Podcast, episode 74, Critical Failures. Today we talk about critical failure roles. We discuss the critical failure and how it is used in games. We also discuss how to approach critical failures in a different way to change up your story. If you'd like to participate in the discussion or leave us feedback, you can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or find us on Facebook at facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. If you like the content and want to hear more of the show, subscribe and we'll ensure you don't miss an episode. New episodes come out almost every Wednesday. Also, please review, tell a friend about the podcast, or share with your gaming group. Now sit back and enjoy the episode. Welcome into the Level Up Your Gaming Podcast. My name is Aaron, and joining me in person, it's been a couple of weeks. Don't botch, Jared.
Just roll tens.
Just roll tens.
Just roll tens. Don't botch.
That was Dave's philosophy.
Dave's philosophy, and he kept doing it.
He kept rolling tens. Just roll tens. That's the key.
He was like, you know what the key to this game is? Just roll tens. And he kept doing it for the love of God. Like I was like, holy shit, is he cheating?
It's been a hell of a long time since I last seen you, Jared. How you doing?
Well, you know, it's we've had some ups and downs in our household over the last couple of weeks. Many of our listeners know that Allie and I are proud cat parents. And after 17 years of being with our cat, Lily, she finally passed away. It was very, very sad. We were horribly hurt. You know, for us as people who've chosen not to have children, our cats are our children. And so, you know, that was really difficult. So I kind of needed to take a little break to kind of process our grief, you know. And but on the plus side of the equation, you know, we were talking with Allie's mom, and she said, you know, we're great cat parents, and we have a home that's full of love, and we want to keep that home full of love, and we have a lot to love to offer. So we went to an animal shelter, and we found, you know, two new kittens that you'll probably hear us grabbing and making stop playing with the equipment a lot. Their names are Harley and Quinn. They're a little over 2 months old. You know, and it's nice because it's having our family. You know, it's not complete. We're always gonna miss Lily. It's always going to be a sad and hard spot for us, but you know, we wanted to open up our house to two cats that need that love, and we got a lot of love to give. So we now have two sisters who just love running around. Right now, it's been a long time since I've had kittens, so you know, we're not used to the 2 hours of running around, them beating up on each other and playing with everything, and then 2 hours of sleep, and then 2 hours of and then them jumping on keyboards while we're recording this. So if you do hear hot noises in the background, like the banging of something, that is probably two kittens, but it looks like they're getting a little sleepy. So I think their 2 hour energy high has worn off. So hopefully it'll be back to nighty night land.
I'm sorry to hear about Lily. I mean, I heard about her last week,
you.
which is why we didn't record last week. I mean, for you, the listener, you shouldn't have noticed any interruption of anything. So we had some episodes recorded in the hopper, but you know, I'm really sorry. I know how much Lily meant to you and Allie. So
she meant the world, but you know, that's life. That's the not to Lion King it, but that's the circle of life. She was. I mean, Allie had her for 17 years. I mean, that is insanely long-lived for a cat. She was at the point of what you call a super senior. You know, and she was in my life since Allie and I have been married. So, and that's coming up on 5 years this November.
It's been a cat that you've had for a long time. So it's been a big part of your life too. So
can you believe it's going to be 5 years in November? It doesn't feel like 5 years. It feels like a year, or two. So, but yeah, so what is our topic? Moving past the sadness and then the joy, of course. What's our topic for today?
Our topic is going to be critical failures.
Ooh, critical failures. A very fun topic to talk about. Delicate in nature. Almost every role-playing system has a critical failure. Critical failure. I don't know why I said it like that, but I did. So, deal. Critical. Almost every system has a critical failure. For people who are new to role-playing, what a critical failure is typically a role that is so poor that it actually is a detriment to the character. It doesn't not just do nothing. Something bad goes wrong. Something bad goes wrong. I am just not on it with the vocabulary right now. Something horrible goes wrong. No, that still doesn't work. Oh my God.
Sorry, Jared's watching me wrangle the cats.
Yeah,
They're crawling all over the equipment right now. But no,
we're going to give them a little, I don't know, like a douse of Robitussin next time before you come over. You know what? I'll run them around for 2 hours before you come over next time. So next time you come over, they'll be asleep.
I think they're gonna calm down over there. But anyways, yeah, no, critical failures, they're part of a lot of role playing systems. If you're playing D&D 5e, the book states that if you roll a 1, regardless of what your modifier is, you fail.
Yep.
Okay. And
White Wolf.
In White Wolf, it's if you botch out, which is you're rolling negative
more botches
successes
than you have successes.
So that's in the D10 system there. And so the problem is that what a lot of people end up doing, specifically in D&D, and I don't know if this came from earlier iterations of D&D because it doesn't state it in the 5e book, but somehow this concept of a critical failure comes in where if you roll a 1, we're going to punish you for rolling the 1. Okay? Or if we...
That's a horrible way of putting it, but yes.
Okay? Or if you roll you roll negative successes in White Wolf, we're going to make a detrimental effect happen to you. Okay?
Go ahead, say it. Punish. We're going to punish you.
We're going to punish you. And the more that I've role played, the more that I look at this system as something that, like, I don't know, maybe in D&D 5e they're trying to get away from it, trying to get away from that critical idea of failure. Meaning that if you roll the 1, you just fail right up. Because meaning no matter how skilled you are, there's always going to be a time that you fail.
Yeah, you're going to not do it.
But it doesn't mean that you are... it doesn't mean that you're going to fail so bad that something so detrimental happens against you. And that's the problem with the critical failures. So, and what I've started doing in White Wolf, the more that I've story told here, is that botches, or at least the way we've always played them, is they compound. So if you roll like a -1, it's like kind of bad. Okay? If you roll like -5, you probably died. Okay.
Probably something so catastrophic happened that you're dead.
Okay, but it's tough because in the White Wolf system, you have success rates that are higher, meaning that your successes are harder to obtain because they're based on a 10-sided die, meaning the standard difficulty is a 6. And if I change your standard difficulty to a 9, the likelihood that you are going to fail is almost as likely as you are going to succeed.
It is, and that's one of the problems. That is a huge problem in the D10 system that I have noted throughout the years, and we've just kind of overridden it, because we've said if you're at a difficulty 9 and you get more failures than successes, it's not like a lightning bolt strikes you. You're trying something super hard, and you simply failed.
Yeah, for example, fully automatic fire in White Wolf is a difficulty 9 to do. And you get a bunch of extra dice, which is great to try to succeed, but on the best roll, you only get 2 successes, maybe?
2, maybe 3.
Okay, so it's just really easy to botch out and to fail that roll. And so it's tough where if you look at the difficulty of maybe the thing that you're trying to have the player do, specifically in maybe the White Wolf terms, but even in D&D terms, let's say that you do play critical failures. So you roll 1, and I'm going to look at this table of terrible misfortunes that happen to you. Okay? Well, if the player is trying to do something super difficult, a failure in that case, it can only get so bad.
Until, exactly. And I think a lot of amateur player or GMs out there, they will say like, no, it can always get worse. No. Eventually, the catastrophe is so great it had nothing to do with the roll. I'm trying to pick this super difficult lock. I get -5 successes. You get struck by lightning.
I mean, you could fail on a perception check, okay, in both D&D and White Wolf, okay? White Wolf, you can get -5 successes on a perception check. Does that mean you go blind? You're permanently blind? Like, you were trying to see so hard that you go permanently? Like, you have to look at the situation and go, is the failure that I'm going to, provide worthwhile to, the experience of what the players were trying to do at the moment? Like, in a perception check, if you roll a 1, you just fail. Okay? It doesn't matter if you're playing critical failure tables. Like, it's not like you fail and then you get impaled by a spear. I mean, like, am I wrong?
I mean, like, unless there is an active assassin coming up behind you, yes, that should not be the case. And a lot of amateur GMs, I've seen it. You roll a 1 and they want to go nuts. You roll a -5, they want to see you get struck by lightning. Even I, as an amateur GM, did this. I mean, literally, I think someone was rolling. I don't even know what Ken was rolling at that time, but he rolled like a -6, and I had a comet hit him.
Yep. Like, well, you didn't know what you were going to do, but you let the whims of the table.
I did, and it was stupid and it was bad.
That's how we ended up with a comet hitting him, and it was bad. And he said, "We'll come back later, and we'll." He was actually trying to activate a power that was so. We were playing a Wraith game, and his Wraith was trying to open a portal into like another dimension. Okay, so like the -6 on the critical failure roll
should have thrown him into a dimension he didn't know.
Yeah, looking back on it now, that's probably the punishment you should have given him. Mm-hmm. But if you were going to kill him, I mean, like the consequence matched sort of the action of the craziness that you're trying to do.
Yeah, but to an extent, I hate clipping characters because of a bad roll.
Yes, it shouldn't come down to one roll. And I think we talked about that in the cheating episode and why we cheat, which is why like you shouldn't let one bad roll do it. And this is a good example of that, which is critical failures are something that could potentially, kill a player.
They could.
Okay, it could be so detrimental that it hamstrings a player in a critical fight that your player like that the monster now has such a huge advantage over the player that it's not even fair anymore.
You know what? It's
you've unbalanced your combat or encounter or whatever you're trying to have the player do immediately.
Yeah, and you know what? Like here's what I want to kind of put out there. It's situational awareness. Botches is an opportunity to be situational, or is a situation in which you must be situationally aware. Is an event in which you must increase your situational awareness. The inexperienced GM and storyteller, what I encourage you to do is look at the situation. Does it merit something horrific happening to the character? Aaron brought up the idea of a perception check. What, are you going to have him go blind? Like, I want you to look at my face in your mind's eye, just kind of giving you like a what? And if it matches the what, that's good. If it doesn't match the what, that's bad. That's bad. That's not good. And essentially, because here's the thing, and as Aaron was talking about combat, I wanted to bring up the point that, in combat sometimes we have this knee-jerk reaction. Let's say we have the main bad guy fighting our heroes. One of our heroes gets a -1. He, we want to say like he knocks the sword out of your hand. And now your player is down to nothing but his fists. Now, the amateur storyteller, that's gonna okay, gotcha. Your more experienced storytellers, what we need to start doing as a community is thinking about the cinematics of the moment. is this going to imbalance our fight to the point where the player is not having any fun anymore? Can they even damage the opponent? You know, for example, if we're fighting this mega bad guy and I've taken the only sword out of the equation and all I have is magic users against this nigh impervious magic guy, and I'm expecting my player to use his fists, now we can't even hurt the bad guy anymore. Is this fun for him anymore? Now, if it's up to the player's quick thinking, you're like, there's another sword. It's sitting in the sorcerer's scabbard. He never uses it, but he has a sword. It's up to the player at that point to think of, hey, Algamar, toss me your sword. Oh, yes, this sword. And he throws it across, and that adds to the cinematic feel in the moment. But if your expectation is for the rest of this fight, he is just going to hands bloody against, you know, specialized armor that's been crafted by a god, which will do nothing. All you've done is hamstring your player in a combat that is supposed to be the pinnacle of a story. You know, and that's why critical failures, you know, I know I say this a lot, but what we have to do is take a breath. You have to take a breath, stop for a moment, and think, what is the actual outcome of this? A lot of us rush to it. We run. We're like, ha-ha! Finally, I've got you, you bastard. I can do whatever I want to. I can play with you like dolls in my hand.
Again, just to kind of speak to that sentiment, you're the GM, okay? You can play with your players regardless.
Whenever you want.
Whenever you want. You don't need them to roll bad to make them, like, suffer.
Like, honestly, if you don't want them to break into a door at a tavern, right, because, I don't know, you've got a story planned in the future for that door, and they're trying to pick the lock, you can literally just say, your lockpick breaks.
Okay, now, I'm not going to say that, like, critical failures don't have their place, because they can bring fun, interesting situations into them. Again, this is why you kind of got to feel it out, okay? It's a
Your
feel.
player, yes,
okay?
Go.
The thing I'm trying to get at here is, so you're trying to pick a lock, okay? And all right, roll me your lock picking. You got plus 59 on lock picking. You're the master of lock picking. You do this in your sleep, okay? You are world renowned lock picker extraordinaire. Clink, you roll the 1. Your lock pick breaks in the door, okay? Okay, I'm not going to stop you here, so that's just a kind of a minor bad thing that's happened now. Okay, but now I'm trying to raise tension in the scene. Okay, you failed. You're the best lock picker in the world, and you failed to pick this lock. Now your lock pick's broken in the door. Now you got to get it out of the door. Also, this is supposed to be a clean job. You're supposed to go in, get the documents, go back out, relock the door. No one was supposed to know you were in there. Okay, now you jimmied up the door. It's all messed up. Okay, it is messed up. So now you're trying to get it out of there, and you're in a place that you have a limited time. Maybe there's like a rotating guard or something going on there. And so what you can start doing is, you as a GM, if you want to introduce a little randomness here, kind of start rolling some things in the background. Okay, don't ask your players. One of the famous things is high-low. Okay?
Oh God,
What I learned about this is,
whatever Jared picks, it's always the opposite.
that is true, but the other thing too is just don't ask your players high-low. Just go, if it's high, this happens. If it's low, this happens. Because why the fuck do I care if my player chooses high-low?
And whatever I pick, it will be the opposite. Like, if there's a chance that, if I have a fighting chance.
Or pick, like, you got a 20-sided die, pick 2 numbers. If it rolls the 2 numbers, if I roll a 19 or a 20, I'm going to have somebody come along the room. So while your player is doing this, like, you're making some noise. Okay, you kind of start bringing up the tension as he's trying to get the lock pick out of there. He's busted up inside, and now you're making noise, and now you're making ruckus, and somebody comes up and, like, maybe it's just a drunk patron. Okay,
perfect
at the bar. And he's like, "Man, what's going on?" Or you introduce them to raise tension within the scene. So the failure was that your lock pick broke, and it's broken in the door, and now you must succeed to get it out of there. But to make the whole scene kind of feel more tense, you can escalate that failure by introducing other aspects that come around to make it a little bit more complex. Bring the mundane task that should have worked to something that's maybe a little bit more tense, maybe a little bit harder to accomplish.
And that's also a perfect example of what you could do creatively because, again, if you have a social character in the group, now he's not just sitting watching for guards. He's got to talk this drunk patron back downstairs before he turns that corner. He's got to get that patron to turn around. And it gives your social character the part of the spotlight. Remember, we talked about spotlight moments. It can be small, and now you're just going to widen it out a little bit.
It's a great way to introduce the rest of your players into that scene that should have been super mundane, super easy for your thief to be able to complete. And now you've got all these other players now trying to like run interference. So like, what the hell's going on?
What do you mean it broke?
You're supposed to be the best at what is going on. You could kind of have a little bit of fun with it there. So that's a way that you could do it in that situation. The other one is rolling kind of perception rolls. What I have found is what I've always tried to do, or what we have sort of aspired to, is that, embrace the botch. Okay? Mm-hmm. Embrace the failure, because if you embrace the failure as the player, then your GM is going to look upon you with kind graces, or hopefully they do. Okay. The reason why I say that,
please God, do they?
Jared and me and Brian, we've been role playing with each other for a while, so we kind of have a feel for one another. But back when I was younger, I was terrified of the failure, and as I've gotten older, I have become more willing to embrace the failure. Okay?
Sometimes we exacerbate it.
Yes, and it's more fun. So when I try to play the situation, which is I know if I'm going to fail or botch a perception roll, it's not just that I failed and I didn't notice what was going on. It's that I just am totally like locked in on something that's wrong, and I'll play that out in the scene.
And it's fantastic. I mean,
it's better than Jared telling me you don't notice it and you go blind.
Exactly. And this is something that we want you to introduce to your players. The idea of embracing a critical failure and actually getting into it. And because it's such an opportunity for role playing. And it gets your players sometimes involved. It just... When your players are now involved in the botch, it's not like my GM fucked me. It's like, no, this event happened and this is how we reacted to the event. It creates such better stories. Now, it's very difficult to do with some groups. Some of your groups might be, you might have certain players.
Again, if you have that cheater in your group, they're going to be terrified of these failures. They're the people who are always succeeding. And typically that can stem from too harsh of failures from the GM in critical failures.
It might be.
That could be part of it.
I mean, it's an environmental factor, that you have to look into when you're kind of doing your analysis on why your cheater is cheating. Are you rather draconian when you decide, oh, you rolled a 1? This is what happens. These are the 10 terrible things that happen to you. If you are a storyteller who literally has a list of the 10 terrible things that happen to you, every time someone rolls 1, trust me, your players are cheating for a reason. Because they actually want to see the end of your story, but at the same time, they're terrified of getting their ass handed to them.
That's completely true. And then, again, if in White Wolf we have this concept of greater failures, associated with the more botches, and we've brought that up here before. You again. The other thing that I want to bring you into is your situational awareness of where you are. So again, if it's a perception roll, I don't care if you roll -1, I don't care if you roll -5. The worst thing that can happen to you is that you just don't know what you're looking for, or that you're so focused on something that is not the object that you're supposed to be looking at. Like if you're just trying to kind of tell the scene, that is the failure that's happening there. In combat, we often use this, and I bring up the combat side of this because the failures in combat that we often experience we'll take it into our realm with just the White Wolf realm that I know very well. You roll a -1. Okay, you're holding the gun jams.
Yep.
Okay, lost a turn effectively is what the failure comes down to, and or a wasted turn. And I never think that that's a terrible trade-off. I think it's always pretty
very
good,
fair.
pretty fair, pretty balancing, because it can happen to the bad guy as well. Okay, if I roll it, the bad guy loses one round, or if I botch on the soak roll, which technically I think in the rules is not supposed to result in any failure.
Yeah, I
and
don't
a botch
think so either, but-
it's supposed to be identical. But if you botch on the soak roll, we typically go into they can knock you out, or you can go into a stun round or something like that. Something bad happens that kind of compounds, and what you kind of have is that trade-off there that it's not just the players who are being subject to the critical failures, it's also the bad guys. And as long as you're treating everybody equally, meaning if the consequence that the player has, the consequences the bad guy have are identical, the players aren't going to rail you for it. Okay? But if the players only feel consequences and the bad guy
Never does.
the players are going to be furious at you.
They're going to be terribly mad. Because it's simply the dice are supposed to be the arbiter, the fair bias, or the fair balancer in the game. Because the bad guy just has to roll just like players do, and the bad guy can fail. And if you are taking away the potential of a failure from the bad guy, suddenly the balancer no longer comes into effect. And me as a player, I'm going to sit there and go, so why don't you just tell me the outcome of the battle?
Yeah, if you want me to fail, just tell me that I'm going to fail. Tell me that when I clash swords with the guy,
I always lose.
My sword, breaks in half and he decapitates me. Like, I mean, it's effectively where you're getting to. I never, and like Jared said, you never want that failure to be the end all be all that kills your character.
No,
okay,
no,
because
never.
that you don't want it to come down to one roll. And that's really what it comes back to. And our listener Chris pointed that out when he responded to our email on cheating, which was, if it comes down to one bad roll, then you've probably done something wrong. And
that's fair.
That's a fair point. It's a really good point on why you got to make sure that this is probably why you probably want to steer away from the critical failure, or use it in a jovial way in times that are a little less threatening than combat.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I like using critical failures in combat. I just don't. I like to use them for stun rounds, knockdowns, knockouts, weapon disablement. Because even if you're a special forces guy, you can have a stoppage and fire. It sucks, but that's what happens. I mean, technically all stoppages of fires could be technically solved by properly cleaning and maintaining your weapon. I'm just saying, but still, it does happen. Sometimes you get a bad bullet. It's got a bad primer. Remember, I think like 4 episodes ago, I couldn't remember that freaking
It was
thing.
a couple episodes ago. I
It's
was
like the firing pin. No, the primer, Jared. The primer.
I was editing the episode, and you were like on like a rant for 5 minutes. I'm like, I should have cut him off.
You should have been like, Jared, calm down. It's okay. You'll be okay. But no, I like having them in combat. Like, respectfully, I disagree. I like having them in combat because, for White Wolf at least, because White Wolf, they don't really have like the special maneuver that causes X effect.
That's a good point. I mean, like the White Wolf one, White Wolf is very fair and balanced in this regard. This is different because the White Wolf has contested roles for everything.
Yes.
Okay. It is
That's the thing that I hate about D&D.
It is convoluted in a way because they're all contested roles, but they are contested roles, and so what they effectively are doing is, giving you more chances to fail as the villain. Because if the villain's dodging, then you are going to fail more times. You have more opportunities to fail. Every player's attack is an opportunity for that villain to fail, and then the villain gets an attack. And it's one attack, and that's another opportunity for the villain to fail.
Yep.
Okay? Just like the players have opportunities to fail, so does your villain.
And it with the villain, I tend to be harsher on consequences. Like a one botch fail could end the villain. I especially like it when the one botch fail results in a knockout. Why? Because then it gives a whole new world to my players. how often do we, as a role playing community, get to actually capture our villains?
It's very rare.
I mean,
Most GMs won't give you the opportunity.
They'll just say like, "Oh, he slipped and bashed his head on a rock and he died." I'm like, I want them to capture the villains nowadays. I do, because it's such. And the great thing is, my players actually go for this. My players, I'm very blessed with two great players that are like, yes, let us capture the villain.
It's been a shift.
Let's put him in handcuffs.
It's been a shift because our original, again, it take us back 10 years. We would the villain would knock himself out. We would have coup de grace him.
Yeah, well, now you're really fucking dead. Yes, that you guys would have stood around him like, I don't know,
we would have gone zombie world, double tap, make sure he's down.
Yeah, I empty the mag into his unconscious body like, holy shit.
Now there have been times when we've killed a villain and I've shot the villain again because of the terrifying nature of the fight.
Yeah, I mean that's happened, but that was because of the terrifying nature of the fight. Like if he gets back up, we're dead. So when it comes to critical failures, I welcome them into your villain as well. Just as your player should go with a good botch. Ask yourself, shouldn't I?
I'll give you a good example of a place that Jared played a critical failure excellently.
Really? There's one of those?
Oh yeah, no. This was in the it was the second iteration of our investigation series. The very first game we were on the illusion train.
Yes.
Okay. We were doing a pretty perilous maneuver as we were trying to cross the coal trucks. We were on
I remember the coal trucks.
We were on a coal train line that runs through Georgia or something like that.
Yes.
And
it wasn't a coal train. It's just actually a historical train.
Historical train. That's what I'm thinking. But it does run on coal because they have a coal car.
It's a steam engine.
They run through the steam. So what ended up happening was we're trying to crawl through that. So we're walking over couplers as the train is moving.
Yep.
And Jared's making us roll as we go over couplers, which is, it's terrifying because you're like, if I botch,
I go under the.
I know what's going to happen. Okay. So what happens? I botch. Okay. I did. Aaron botched.
Oh, yes.
But now Jared doesn't want to just kill me by having me fall off the train and die. Okay. So what he did is he said, let's see if the NPC is good enough to catch you. And he did. The NPC caught me. Okay. And then we were trying to pull ourselves up. So, like, it's kind of a combined strength thing, trying to save ourselves. Jared gave me a little bit of a way out. Fun thing. I am facing my untimely death soon. Okay. And what ended up happening was I think I botched, and Brian caught in and started helping out here. But somewhere along the line, I botched again in the strength roll because we got flipped where I ended up back upright and the conductor ends up in the slipping position. I botched. And that was when Jared finally took it and said, what happens is you see the conductor, you reach out your hand, you just miss, and he goes, no, as he goes under the train. And it was like, it just take that for a moment because he pauses there, and it's like in that movie, in that very, very brief moment, he just goes, no.
That was a good botch.
It was a good play of botches. You didn't. You gave an opportunity to save me from my botch because you knew what the botch would mean. Mm-hmm. So, like, this is a good tool for people. Have maybe a way to get people out of it if you're going to have the critical failure in that sort of situation. You're going to make people roll to do something like that. Have a way to maybe save a player. Okay, give them that save, or after a series of events, it flips around. We can't save everybody.
Nope.
Okay, your botch has cascaded down, and now I'm going to take that NPC from you.
Boy, howdy, did I do?
You did it.
And you played it out great because your character was traumatized by that.
You damn right I was traumatized by that. I went to grab somebody's hand and he fell under the... I think actually I had him, and he failed his strength check, and so he slipped through my hand.
Slipped out.
Yeah, it was rough. It was rough. But yeah, no, I wanted to throw that one out there because there are ways that you can use the critical failure to be more successful or to hit notes as well.
Yes,
but just be careful with it. That's, I guess, my...
You do. You have to be careful with it. And you know what? I hate to harp. But as with all actions in storytelling, does it increase your story? Does it increase the fun?
Exactly.
Does it do either of these two things? Does it just remind the players that if you fuck up, shit sometimes can go wrong? It should never be, if you fuck up, I will tax you. Don't do that. Don't. The critical failure should not be a tax on your players. The critical failure should be a frank reminder that sometimes things can go wrong, completely unwilled. And you should always look at, does it increase the story? Does it increase the fun? Can I use this as an opportunity to bring an element into the scene that I was not planning on before? I wasn't planning on the drunken idiot walking up the stairs. Oh, I just gave an opportunity to my social player to turn this drunk back down the stairs. You know, and so with critical failures, you really just need to have that situational awareness. It's a high situational awareness moment that you got to take that breath, think, and then proceed. Because so many of us, we are trained by previous storytellers, by other people in our lives, that, man, I got you, bitch. I got you.
Ooh, time to make us up for that.
I'm going to play like you like dolls in my hand. A storyteller can do that any day, anytime. And if you're that kind of storyteller, perhaps you should reevaluate.
This is the Level Up Your Gaming podcast.
Let's level it up. Yeah.
Anything else you want to add to this one?
No, this I felt like I got my points across. Now I'm gonna snuggle two cute kittens.
Indeed, you will. They are quite cute. So really quick before I wrap up the episode, there was another follow-up email from Mike from our episode last week on the big bad villain that we had here, and his question was, how long do you wait before the players face the big bad evil bad guy? Or is it just after they exhaust all their lieutenants? He asked me this. I replied to it, and I think that I don't remember if we hit on this in the episode, but basically it depends on how fast your players.
It is. I mean, like, honestly, if they're tearing through them in like one session per lieutenant, and you have it planned for one session per lieutenant, okay, they're on schedule. If they went through all three lieutenants in one session, punt.
Yeah, my suggestion here is it's easy to add more guys between you and the end guy. Okay, it's a lot harder. It's also easier. It's easy to subtract. So build an organization that you feel is like reasonably sized.
Yeah,
and then if your players and then let your players go through a couple of them, see the pace. Is it too many that you've got in line, or is it too few? Okay, and if it's too few, add a couple more. And if it's too many, get rid of some.
Yeah, just
because your players don't know enough about the organization to know that they're not encountering these other guys.
And to add to that, if you ever have too few, and let's say you have the situation where they rip through all three lieutenants you had planned in one night. Another thing that you can do is, so in that situation, you're going to have a reaction. The NPC is going to react. Something you can do to kind of buy yourself time is if my organization got ripped apart, like in a single night, I'm going to retaliate. I'm gonna hire, a couple of some pipe hitters, and I'm gonna find out where you live, and I'm gonna send my assassins. So that could retard them for a little bit while you rebuild your organization.
It's a good way to do it. And then the other thing, the last little point I always like to mention with this is it's really a feel thing with your players. Because if they're going through it, even if they're going through it at a good pace, and your players start getting, exhausted with it, that's when you know that you just have to get rid of the other guys and just say, this is the final guy. He knows the last piece of information or is able to point you in the right direction to get to the head of the pyramid. So just again, it's a feel thing, always going to be a feel thing at the very end of it.
Look into the eyes of your player.
Yep.
Are your players engaged? Are they having fun? Are your players bored? Are they moving too fast? They think it's too easy? Listen to them at the table. Listen to our players, and trust me, your players will tell you what your course and speed should be.
But yeah, and so that I just wanted to say thanks again, Mike, for sending that email. Good follow up here. Wanted to bring it back up here, the following week. But anyways, it's going to wrap it up for us. If you like the podcast, you want to send us a comment on critical failures. Maybe you've evolved past critical failures. Maybe you used to do them, you hate them. Maybe this is something you like to do on the critical failure scale, something like that. You can contact us at levelupyourgamingpodcast@gmail.com or facebook.com/levelupyourgaming. You can comment on the episode there or send us a message. We're happy to reply. Also, we are on YouTube. Comes out a couple days later. So
hit that like button with a spear when no one's looking. Hit it.
Stab it with a spear.
Stab it with a spear.
But be mindful of your computer monitor.
Yes, please. Please.
And, go ahead and review us on your favorite podcast site. Apple Podcast or Podchaser are both good places. If you can give us a review there, we'd appreciate it. But anyways, that's going to wrap us up for the week. So for Jared, I'm Aaron. Have a great week, everyone.
Have a great week, everyone.